The silver screen may shimmer with elegance, but behind the curtain of Hollywood's most celebrated films lies a battlefield of egos, tempers, and impossible creative standards. And at the center of that battlefield, no name towers higher than Martin Scorsese, the maestro of American cinema, the architect of crime and conscience, the director actors dream of working with until they actually do. Because while Scorsese is revered as a genius, genius does not mean gentle. He is meticulous, demanding, relentless in pursuit of the perfect take. And for some actors, that pursuit becomes unbearable. Friendships fray, tempers boil, and what begins as artistic collaboration curdles into silent resentment. Yes, even Martin Scorsese, patron saint of the modern auteur, has walked away from certain actors with clenched teeth and promises never to repeat the experience. And tonight, we peel back that curtain. These are 10 actors Martin Scorsese vehemently hated working with. Some were titans of the industry, some were bright new stars, and some you'd never expect. But all share one thing. When the camera stopped rolling, Marty wanted them gone. And you won't believe who ends up at number 1. Number 10. Mark Wahlberg. When Mark Wahlberg stepped onto the set of The Departed in 2005, he was already an actor on the rise, proving himself beyond his Marky Mark days with gritty roles in Boogie Nights and Three Kings. But in Scorsese's world, a world of towering reputations and obsessive detail, Wahlberg was still the new kid trying to prove he belonged. His role as Sergeant Dignam should have been his moment of triumph. The brash, foul-mouthed cop stole nearly every scene he appeared in, earning Wahlberg his first and only Academy Award nomination. But behind the curtain, things weren't so smooth. Wahlberg has since admitted he was angry at the way Scorsese kept pushing him, offering endless direction, challenging every choice, and treating him almost as a pawn in a much larger chess game. In later interviews, Wahlberg described feeling pissed about the experience, saying he didn't even want the part at first and only took it after heavy persuasion. The tension showed. On set, he was reportedly short-tempered, clashing not just with the director but with co-stars who didn't take kindly to his rough Boston edge. And when the film wrapped, Wahlberg didn't race to work with Scorsese again. In fact, the two have never collaborated since. Wahlberg's resentment lingered despite the acclaim, as if the Golden Oscar nomination had been bought at the cost of his pride. Scorsese, for his part, never badmouthed Wahlberg, but the silence speaks volumes. In a career spanning half a century, Marty almost always returns to actors he respects. With Wahlberg, the phone never rang again. Number 9. Leonardo DiCaprio. At first glance, it sounds absurd. Leonardo DiCaprio is the modern face of Martin Scorsese's cinema. His golden muse across Gangs of New York, The Aviator, The Departed, Shutter Island, The Wolf of Wall Street, and most recently, Killers of the Flower Moon. Their partnership rivals that of Scorsese and De Niro in the 1970s. So how could he possibly belong on a list like this? The answer lies in the friction beneath the genius. During Killers of the Flower Moon, Scorsese revealed that DiCaprio's improvisational instincts tested the patience of everyone involved. He often tossed out pages of script to explore winding emotional detours, a method that worked brilliantly in some films, but in this particular project it left co-star Robert De Niro visibly irritated. Scorsese himself admitted that DiCaprio's endless improvisation stretched the process, demanding constant rewrites, rethinking, and reshooting. It wasn't the first time. Reports from The Aviator suggested that DiCaprio's obsession with finding the truth sometimes meant holding up production with repeated takes and sudden changes in approach. Scorsese, a man who thrives on rhythm and precision, was forced to adjust, sometimes reluctantly. Hate may be too strong a word for this stormy dynamic, but when two titans collide, one a director chasing cinematic perfection, the other an actor chasing emotional purity, sparks are inevitable. Theirs is a collaboration born of love and exasperation, a marriage that thrives on conflict. And yet Scorsese keeps coming back to DiCaprio. Why? Because in Marty's world, frustration is sometimes the price of greatness. Still, behind closed doors, one wonders, how many times has Scorsese walked away from a DiCaprio shoot muttering under his breath, swearing it would be the last? Number 8. Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro is to Martin Scorsese what brush is to canvas. Together, they've painted some of cinema's most indelible portraits. Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Casino, The Irishman. Their names are nearly inseparable. But behind the mythology of their friendship lies something rarely acknowledged. They fight. A lot. De Niro is a perfectionist. He immerses himself so deeply in a character that he demands time, space, and sometimes endless retakes to find the rhythm. Scorsese, though equally meticulous, operates with a different urgency. On set, their clashes are often volcanic. Scorsese has admitted that during Raging Bull, he and De Niro argued constantly over lines, staging, even the interpretation of Jake LaMotta's silences. At one point, the tension became so severe that Scorsese briefly considered walking away. Their disputes weren't only artistic. Friends recalled De Niro pressuring Scorsese to tackle projects he wasn't sure about, pushing him into territories Marty might otherwise have avoided. Their bond was so close it occasionally bred resentment, the feeling of being artistically tethered to one another even when the road grew rough. And yet, the irony is that their fights may have fueled their art. The explosive realism of Taxi Driver, the raw brutality of Raging Bull, those weren't polite collaborations. They were forged in fire. So, did Scorsese hate working with Robert De Niro? In the heat of the moment, almost certainly. But like any old marriage, the fury never lasted long. For Marty, De Niro was the actor he could argue with all night and then call again in the morning. Number 7. Harvey Keitel. Before De Niro, before DiCaprio. Before the Oscars and the operatic crime sagas, there was Harvey Keitel. He was Scorsese's first great muse, starring in Who's That Knocking at My Door, Mean Streets, and Taxi Driver. In the 1970s, Keitel was Marty's go-to, the gritty soul who could embody the urban desperation Scorsese knew so well. But early collaborations are rarely without turbulence. Keitel was a method actor in the rawest sense. He'd show up unshaven, moody, carrying the weight of his characters long after the cameras stopped rolling. For Scorsese, already obsessive and prone to emotional intensity himself, the partnership sometimes felt like staring into a mirror that reflected too much darkness. During Taxi Driver, Keitel's improvisations as Sport, the pimp, unsettled not just the crew but Scorsese himself. He pushed boundaries with graphic ad-libs, searingly uncomfortable physicality, and a refusal to let go of character between takes. Rumors swirled that Keitel's energy was so disruptive that Scorsese began limiting his screen time, quietly pulling back from the actor he once relied on most. And then, they drifted. After the mid-70s, Keitel largely disappeared from Scorsese's inner circle, replaced by De Niro, who brought a different kind of discipline to the same gritty roles. For Keitel, it must have stung, watching his old friend build a career-defining partnership with someone else. They reunited decades later in The Irishman, but by then the spark had cooled. Scorsese gave Keitel only a handful of lines, as if paying homage to the past without daring to reopen old wounds. Did Marty hate working with Keitel? Perhaps not in words, but the silence between them across 40 years spoke louder than anything. Number 6. Joe Pesci. Few actors burn as brightly, or as briefly, in Scorsese's universe as Joe Pesci. He was the firecracker, the live wire, the man who could turn a quiet dinner scene into a powder keg with just 2 words. Funny how? Their collaborations, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Casino, and The Irishman, are immortal, But ask anyone who's shared a set with Joe Pesci, and the word easy rarely comes up. Pesci is famously mercurial. He hates the Hollywood machine, despises endless press tours, and bristles at the grind of long shoots. On Casino, insiders whispered that his on-set temper matched that of his character, Nicky Santoro, sharp, volatile, and impossible to contain. Pesci's refusal to play by Hollywood's rules often left Scorsese caught in the middle, trying to channel raw chaos into disciplined storytelling. By the mid-1990s, their partnership had collapsed. Pesci virtually quit acting, retreating into a reclusive life of golf and music. Scorsese, meanwhile, turned to DiCaprio for fresh energy. When Pesci finally returned for The Irishman in 2019, it was only after years of begging. Scorsese and De Niro reportedly had to call him dozens of times before he reluctantly agreed. Even then, Pesci laid down boundaries. No screaming gangsters this time, no cliches, no return to the volatility that had made him a legend. Did Scorsese hate working with him? In the moment, probably. Pesci's obstinance could derail a set. His temper could scorch a room, and yet the results were undeniable. Marty may have cursed Joe Pesci under his breath more than once, but he also knew no one else could do what Joe did, a love-hate relationship if ever there was one. Number 5. Cameron Diaz. When Martin Scorsese set out to make Gangs of New York in the late 1990s, it was his most ambitious project yet. A sprawling historical epic decades in the making. With Daniel Day-Lewis and Leonardo DiCaprio headlining, the stakes were monumental. But the casting of Cameron Diaz as Jenny Everdeen raised eyebrows from the start. Diaz was at the height of her stardom, known for magnetic performances in romantic comedies like There's Something About Mary. But on Scorsese's violent, blood-soaked canvas, she seemed out of place, and Scorsese reportedly knew it. Studio executives, desperate to add star power and bankability, pushed for her involvement. Marty relented but quietly admitted years later that Diaz's presence never felt fully in tune with the world he was creating. On set, the disconnect was palpable. Diaz worked hard, but her lighter touch clashed with the dark, operatic intensity of Day-Lewis's Bill the Butcher and DiCaprio's Amsterdam Vallon. Scorsese, who thrived with actors steeped in method madness, now had to shepherd a performer used to a very different rhythm. The result? Tension, endless reshoots, and a performance critics widely considered one of the film's weakest links. For Scorsese, the frustration must have been crushing. After pouring decades of passion into the project, he had to compromise. And compromise is something he rarely forgives. It's telling that Diaz never worked with him again. In Scorsese's carefully curated circle of collaborators, she was a one-time guest who left a sour aftertaste. Number 4. Sharon Stone. When Sharon Stone walked into Casino in 1995, she wasn't just playing Ginger McKenna. She became her. Wild, seductive, self-destructive, and endlessly magnetic, Stone's performance burned so brightly it earned her an Academy Award nomination. But the fire that lit up the screen nearly consumed the set. Stone was at a volatile point in her career. Fresh off the global explosion of Basic Instinct, she was typecast as the ultimate femme fatale, yet desperate to prove her depth as a serious actress. Scorsese gave her the opportunity, but the process was anything but smooth. According to crew members, Stone often clashed with Scorsese's meticulous style. She brought her own improvisations, resisted heavy-handed direction, and sometimes unraveled under the immense pressure of carrying such a demanding role. Her personal life at the time, turbulent relationships, endless tabloid scrutiny, spilled onto the set, making her energy unpredictable. Scorsese, himself a perfectionist, was tested daily. He needed control. She thrived on chaos. Their arguments were reportedly fierce, and at times Scorsese considered replacing her altogether. But he didn't, perhaps sensing that the very volatility driving him mad was what made Ginger unforgettable. In the end, Stone delivered one of the greatest performances of her career, and Scorsese cemented Casino as a classic. But the cost was high. They never worked together again, as if both knew the collaboration had pushed them too close to the edge. Sometimes brilliance comes from harmony. With Sharon Stone, it came from fire. Number 3. Daniel Day-Lewis. Daniel Day-Lewis is widely hailed as the greatest actor of his generation, a master of transformation who disappears into his roles with terrifying intensity. And in Gangs of New York, his portrayal of Bill the Butcher Cutting may be one of the most mesmerizing performances ever captured on film. But for Martin Scorsese, working with Day-Lewis was as much a battle as it was a blessing. Day-Lewis is the embodiment of method acting. On set, he stayed in character at all times, refusing to break the butcher's sneer, speaking in a guttural 19th century New York accent even off camera, and reportedly sharpening real knives between takes. He would walk around in costume, intimidating cast and crew alike, because for him, the line between actor and role simply didn't exist. For Scorsese, who thrives on control and precision, this intensity was both electrifying and maddening. While Day-Lewis delivered genius in front of the camera, his refusal to compromise often slowed down production. Leonardo DiCaprio admitted he was terrified of him on set, and even seasoned crew members found the atmosphere overwhelming. Scorsese admired Day-Lewis's commitment, but also recognized the toll it took. The director later joked that it was like living with Bill the Butcher every day of shooting, a prospect that left him exhausted. The fact that Day-Lewis retired soon after only underscores how much his methods drained not just himself, but everyone around him. The collaboration yielded brilliance, but at a cost Scorsese has never sought to pay again. Day-Lewis gave him greatness, but also chaos, and Marty never called him back. Number 2. Nicolas Cage. By the late 1990s, Nicolas Cage was riding high. He'd won an Oscar for Leaving Las Vegas, transformed into an action star with The Rock and Face Off, and cemented his reputation as one of Hollywood's boldest, most unpredictable talents. When Martin Scorsese tapped him to star in Bringing Out the Dead, 1999, a fever dream exploration of a burned-out New York paramedic, the pairing seemed like destiny. But what looked perfect on paper became, in reality, a battle of styles. Cage brought his signature volatility to the role, unpredictable shifts in tone, wild-eyed improvisations, sudden bursts of energy that came from nowhere. Scorsese, by contrast, was working toward something quieter, more haunting, a mood piece that captured spiritual exhaustion rather than manic theatrics. The result? Friction crew members described a disconnect between director and star, with Cage pushing for emotional fireworks while Scorsese tried to rein him in. Critics later noticed the imbalance too, praising Scorsese's direction but questioning Cage's erratic performance, which some felt undercut the film's somber mood. For Scorsese, who demands total alignment with his vision, the experience was draining. Cage's unpredictability may have been fascinating, but it wasn't what Marty needed. The box office failure of Bringing Out the Dead sealed the verdict. Scorsese never worked with him again, quietly retreating from the chaos of Cage's creative storm. Did Scorsese hate him? Maybe not as a man, but as a collaborator he walked away disappointed and never returned. Number 1. Jack Nicholson. Few names in Hollywood carry the mythic weight of Jack Nicholson. By the time Scorsese cast him in The Departed, 2006, Nicholson was a living legend. 3 Oscars deep, the embodiment of devilish charisma. He was the wild card of American cinema, and Scorsese thought he'd found the perfect man to play mob boss Frank Costello. What he got instead was chaos. Nicholson, long accustomed to directors bending to his every whim, treated the set like his personal playground. He tossed out scripted lines, invented bizarre gestures, and pushed scenes into territory no one, not even Scorsese, could predict. Some of his ad-libs were genius, like the infamous rat monologue. Others veered into the absurd, with Nicholson reportedly bringing props like real guns and sex toys to set, improvising in ways that left both DiCaprio and Matt Damon stunned into silence. Scorsese, ever the master of controlled precision, suddenly found himself wrangling a force of nature he could not contain. Behind the camera, he indulged Nicholson's antics, hoping brilliance would emerge from the madness. But privately, insiders said Marty was exasperated, forced to stitch together coherence from Nicholson's theatrical indulgence. The strain was evident. Though The Departed won Scorsese his long-overdue Oscar for Best Director, he never worked with Nicholson again. For all the film's success, the collaboration left a bitter aftertaste, a reminder that genius actors can sometimes smother a director's vision rather than serve it. So, who did Scorsese hate working with most? Not the hot-headed Wahlberg, not the mercurial Pesci, not even the obsessive Day-Lewis. It was Jack Nicholson, the icon who gave him brilliance, yes, but at a cost Marty swore never to pay again. The outro. And so we arrive at the truth. For every masterpiece Martin Scorsese has carved into the granite of cinema, there have been battles behind the curtain, battles with tempers, with egos, with actors who either gave too much or refused to give at all. Mark Wahlberg stormed away angry. Leonardo DiCaprio tested patience with endless improvisation. Robert De Niro fought him like a brother. Harvey Keitel burned too hot too soon. Joe Pesci resisted the industry itself. Cameron Diaz never fit the mold. Sharon Stone gave fire that nearly consumed the set. Daniel Day-Lewis lived so deeply in his roles that Marty could barely survive the immersion. Nicolas Cage veered off into chaos. And Jack Nicholson, the legend, took control of The Departed in ways Scorsese would never allow again. Did Scorsese truly hate these actors? Perhaps not in the way we imagine. Hate in this story is a shorthand for something deeper, the ferocious tension that rises when two uncompromising visions collide. Out of that tension comes either collapse or greatness, and for Scorsese, more often than not, the very frustrations he endured became the fuel for films that defined his legacy. Because cinema is not built on harmony alone. It is built on conflict, on passion, on the unbearable heat of creation. And when we look at the Scorsese canon, we are reminded that behind every immortal frame there may be clenched teeth, bruised egos, and words muttered in private that never make the press. That is the hidden cost of genius. So now the question is yours. Which of these clashes surprised you most? And do you believe conflict is what makes Scorsese's work so unforgettable, or in spite of it? If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment down below as it helps support this channel. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.